Fuck it. Cheers, everybody. Episode 6. 9th of February 1982, 3:21 p.m. Don't know why I bother reading these fucking papers, said Joey. Nae cunt's got a job, and yet the main story's about fucking Booger Benson and Tucker Jenkins. Heatwave's a good name though, isn't it? Bobby was distracted and more than a bit nervous. There's no way the Tories are going to get back in after this. No cunt our age has got any chance of working. Everybody's either on the brew or in one of the useless fucking yop schemes. Joey was aware that Bobby wasn't really listening. He was away in another world, a world of shiny lights and massive glitter balls. I think we should get off here, said Bobby. There was no bus stop in sight, but Joey got up and followed him to the front of the bus. Can you let us off here, driver? We're going to Crosshouse Farm. I think it's round about here. The driver pulled over to one side and opened the door, letting in the bitingly cold air. Cheers, mate, said Bobby, as Joey shivered behind him. Although not entirely certain that it was the correct road, the two friends began the walk up the single-track hill in the hope that a farm would be at the other end of it. It was freezing, and a shower had just started to drive into their faces. This had better be worth it, thought Joey. He pulled the hood of his fishtail Parker up as defence. Bobby hadn't had the same foresight and had to make do with zipping up a beige Harrington as far as the zip would go. As they tramped on, the beige got rapidly darker. Remember in Sons of the Desert when the two of them are struggling to walk up that sand dune? That's what this is like. Bobby knew this would lighten Joey's mood. They were both fans of Laurel and Hardy and often compared something that they were doing to a scene from one of the old films. In these analogies, Bobby was always Ollie the organiser and Joey was always the clumsy childlike Stan. The rain was coming down in angular sheets and Bobby was extremely relieved to see the sign for Crosshands Farm at the junction in the road, just over the brow of the hill. Less pleasing was the figure 2 written in small type next to the words. 2 fucking miles, shouted Joey. We've already walked about 3 in the pissing rain. You were the one that got the directions for that McGarry boy. Joey had to reluctantly concede that a big fern near Hurlford wasn't the most precise of Ordnance Survey coordinates. At least the remainder of the journey was basically downhill. It was endured in silence, though Bobby's anxiety grew as he rehearsed the negotiations with Harry Doug, the sound and light man. Joey was simply dreaming of getting home and into a hot bath. They approached the rustic collection of sheds and outhouses that surrounded the original farmhouse. The driving rain had abated slightly. Look at my fucking Desi boots, moaned Joey, and looking down mournfully at his feet, he didn't see the enormous black Alsatian dog moving at speed towards him. Bobby saw it and instinctively pushed Joey away. A rope attached to the dog prevented the animal from reaching him, yanking it back at its extremity in cartoon fashion. Bobby laughed, and the restrained, angry dog vented its fury. When he looked round, Joey was getting up from his shallow swamp into which Bobby had just pushed him. His Levi's were covered in wet, slimy mud, his Parker's mod insignia almost completely obscured. Only the head of an arrow and the letters T and W from the words The Who were still decipherable. Oh, fucking thanks, man, grunted Joey, mucky water dripping from his hands. Can I help you? A gruff, elderly voice could be heard, but unlike the howling and the barking, it wasn't apparent where it was coming from. Bobby rotated 180 degrees and back, but still couldn't see the source. Hey, you two, who the fuck are you looking for? The voice seemed to be coming from a higher level. Bobby looked up towards the farmhouse itself. Joey was leaning against the gate, 1 foot up, trying to scrape large sods of mud from his distressed suede boots. Hello, my name's Bobby Cassidy. Is Doug about? I'm here to buy some disco lights off him. Bobby called out towards the source of the voice, even though he still couldn't see its owner. You're looking for Harry Doug? The intonation suggested more than one Doug worked on the farm. The voice paused and then continued. He's over there in that blue shed. Don't know if he's in though. Cheers, mate, said Bobby before whispering, wherever the fuck you are. Bobby and Joey walked gingerly across the deep ripples of mud towards the shed. For Joey, it was very much a case of the horse having bolted, as everything from his shins down couldn't have got any filthier. Bobby had been more careful, and having worn black Doc Marten lace-up boots was more prepared for the conditions below the knee. Harry Doug's blue corrugated iron shed was the most distant building from the main house. A few old horse troughs had to be navigated before Joey spotted a path that reached a different gate from the one they'd just clambered over. The whole area in front of the building had that bomb blast appearance of places in the Lebanon from which Kate Adie regularly reported. Bits of engines lay rusting next to an oven, piles of dense grey concrete blocks rested on numerous fragments of broken glass, isolated bricks were strewn around, and, as cliché dictated, an armless, boss-eyed, tiny tears doll stared up at them like a miniature Marty Feldman. Marty Feldman moment, fact fans. The rain intensified. Joey spotted a door. It was clad in the same furrowed material as the rest of the building and was, as a consequence, easy to miss. Beyond it, and almost totally concealed by a clump of overgrown shrubbery, was a small inset pane of dirty cobwebbed glass. There was no door handle, no obvious mechanism for alerting anyone inside. As Bobby approached the door, the tinny sound of "Since You've Been Gone" could be heard. This prompted him to push back the heavy bushes and step up on a few bricks to peek through the glass. "Joey! Joe!" he whispered, barely audible. "Fucking hell, Joe, that must be him. He's in there having a wank." "Honestly, fucking pervert. Is there anybody else in there with him?" Joey spoke even more quietly than Bobby, for fear of Harry Doug coming outside with the biggest cock in Scotland still in his hand. "No, he's gone mental with it in there himself. Tell you what though, your pal Jeff wasn't exaggerating. That thing's the length of a fucking javelin. He's got hands like Sepp Meyer and there's still more cock showing than covered up. When he shoots, it's going to be like Mount Etna erupting." For the first time since they got off the bus, Joey was struggling to contain his laughter. "On you go, get in there." "Shift over and gives a look then," whispered Joey. "Aye, watch your feet," warned Bobby, both of them still speaking in whispered tones. Bobby's extra few inches in height permitted him a view without him had to stand on top level of the bricks. He felt they looked a bit unsteady. Joey needed this extra elevation, but before he could see in through the glass, the highest row gave way and he crashed into an adjacent bush. Bobby jumped to attention and positioned himself front of the door seconds before it opened. The python was back in its basket, but the lid remained off. Harry Doug's filthy jeans had been pulled up quickly, but apparently unknown to its handler, the business end was still visible. From his vantage point at the bottom of the makeshift steps, Bobby realised he was exactly at eye level with the biggest cock in Scotland. It was an average-sized door opening, but it still struggled to contain Doug's massive frame. He was well named. There was little skin on his face. It was not covered by unruly, lengthy, dark hair. It hung down over his eyebrows and rose up from an almost comedy ZZ Top beard to a level above his nose. The figure of 8 patch of oily skin around his eyes resembled a ski mask. Everything else was stereotypical rocker, armless ripped leather biker's waisty over dirty denim jacket over black torn Grateful Dead t-shirt. Silver skeleton head buckle belt holding up oil-stained faded blue jeans. Zip still wide open, python coiled. Biker boots of a size that nursery rhyme families could have lived in. Fortunately, Bobby detected no hint or shame that the hairy behemoth in front of him was aware he'd been caught masturbating to a soft rock rainbow song. So he opened with the only thing he could think of. "You must be Harry Doug. I'm Bobby. I phoned you earlier." "Aye, lad, come in." He looked down at Joey, who was pulling himself free of the thorny overgrown bushes. "Is your pal all right?" Harry Doug smiled warmly and extended the hand that had only minutes earlier been wrangling his own rope. Bobby tentatively and weakly shook the hand. It was warm and a bit moist. Sweat, Bobby hoped. "Clearly one for the understatement," Doug offered. "Sorry, place is a wee bit of a mess." Bobby couldn't place the accent. It seemed to be a bizarre mix of many identifiable regional dialects, such as Cockney, Cornish and the Doric. Looking around his war zone, it was apparent that Harry Doug was no believer in putting down roots. His place, with the army-style fold-up camp bed in one corner, had the look of an environment that could be evacuated in minutes if the wrong people came calling. It was cramped with the same sort of debris that was out in the yard, only there was far more of it, and forced into a much smaller area. Shelves of oil cans, car batteries and paint tins. A small TV set with a coat hanger aerial teetered on an old Edwardian-style coach-built pram. A large woodwork bench sat in the middle of the room, causing Joey to look twice at the door and wonder whether the shell of the structure had been built after the bench had been bolted to the shed's concrete floor. "Just grab a seat, lads," said Harry Duke, as he went over to a small stove that was concealed behind a sheet hanging from a line strung across the width. "Tea?" No for me, mate," said Bobby. Joey had found somewhere to perch, although he jumped back up from the newspaper-covered stool, believing that something living had just moved when he'd sat on it. "How did you get my name again?" said Doug, his previous cheeriness now replaced by a more serious let's get down to business tone. Joey felt that he should take this one. "Jeff McGarry gave me your name. Said you hired out mobile disco gear and lights and that." "Ah, okay, the boy McGarry. Is he your mate?" "No, no really. I've kent his family for a while, but likes the cows, does that boy. Bit too much, I think," said Doug, interrupting Joey. Bobby knew a bit about Jeff's story. It had become part of Ayrshire folklore in recent years. Almost 3 years before, a Kilmarnock Standard report hidden away on an inside page had told of rustling at Macadam Farm near Comores. 4 young men, 3 of them brothers, and the 4th a cousin, had stolen a prize-winning cow from a barn in the middle of the night. Amazingly, they'd managed to walk it about 3 miles back to a vacant boarded-up council house in Onthank with the purpose of killing it and selling the meat. The premise was born in Hollywood. 15-year-old ringleader Jeff had come up with the idea after seeing an eye-wateringly gory scene in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The gang had managed to get the petrified beast into a ground-floor bathroom, although by all accounts, squeezing its girth through the 2 doors to get it there was a major exercise in patience. Jeff hadn't thought the plan through properly, so when it came time to fire up the electric hedge cutters that were playing the role of chainsaw and look into those big brown eyes, none of the rustlers had the bottle. They also couldn't get into the bathtub from where the blood might have been more easily disposed. They spent the night in there, getting drunk in the hope that courage would be plucked up, but the moment had passed. The McGarrys felt the best plan of action was to disappear over the back gardens, leaving the cow in the bathroom for someone else to find. Someone else did find it almost 2 days later. The smell and the incessant mooing had been traced by a neighbour in Colombo to the empty house. He had a look around earlier, but had assumed the noises were a practical joke, as opposed to a cow having taken up rent-free residence in the nearby house. The local police caught up with the gang without too much investigation. One of them had left a list of potential carnivorous customers and their phone numbers on top of the cistern. It was entitled Jeff's Coo Meat. Bobby was staggered to discover that following his time in a Young Offenders Institute, Jeff had been offered a chance at rehabilitation with a job on this farm and surrounded by cows. There was a pause as Doug sipped his tea from a metal cup. Bobby broke the short silence. "So what is it you do in the farm?" "Oh, not much really. Mr. and Mrs. Wallace let me stay here and work from the shed if I fix the tractor engines for them. I'm away a lot of the time, a roadie for bands mostly. Black Sabbath, AC/DC, The Clash, you know." This last entry seemed a bit out of kilter, but Doug went on to explain that you didn't have to like their music to take their money. Joey had a feeling that Heatwave's Disco's motto might ultimately be the same as Harry Doug's. "So what do you need then?" asked Doug. "Well, we're just starting out, so basically everything," replied Bobby, sensing that Doug might be a man who could be trusted not to take advantage of a couple of virgins. "We've got a few bookings," Bobby lied. "Mobile disco parties, so decks, speakers, and a few lights to start with, I'd have thought. Come on through here." Harry Doug flicked a switch, and 3 industrial fluorescent strip lights came on. They helped illuminate a cluttered path to a previously unseen second door in the far corner of the room. Walking through the door was like entering Narnia. The contrast between the chaos of Doug's front room and his private store was breathtaking. Rows of Marshall PA columns were stacked neatly in one corner. 4 double-deck turntable units were laid out in an immaculate row on the central table, alongside a large group of sound mixers. Hundreds of feet of cables were hanging on hooks with labels reading 5 foot, 10 foot, 15 foot, 20 foot and over, stuck to the wall white painted blockwork above them. At the far end of the room there were boxes of lights, many purloined from Harry Doug's time on the road. There were spots on bars, long twisting rope lights, cabinets of various shapes and sizes, major Super Trooper field lights, disco balls, strobe lights and black lights and smoke machines. All stacked so neatly it was as if Harry Doug had just divorced Mary Poppins and she'd been granted custody of the sound and light store. So I can hire you the basic package: deck, sound to light mixer, bass cabinets and speakers. How does that sound? If you want to make a real go of it, you bring them back and we talk price for buying. Even before asking, Bobby knew this first gig wasn't going to make them rich. Yeah, okay, said Bobby. How much for all that? 40 quid, lads. 24-hour hire, replied Harry Doug. When do you want the gear for? The gig's on the 17th, tail end of next week, said Bobby. No problem. 50% deposit up front, okay? Harry Doug moved over to a desk and picked up a small diary. He opened it up and Joey was able to glimpse that there were no other names or bookings in the few pages flicked over to get to the 17th of February. They left shortly afterwards, way down in profit, but childishly excited and contented. A couple of clowns celebrating their deal with Harry Doug, hefty of frame and of price, and accepted as the owner of one of the biggest cocks in Scotland. Jeff McGarry couldn't possibly have seen them all. Good night. Episode 7, tomorrow night.